Hey, Jack. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Some time ago, we decided to record stuff about interesting methodologies, tools, whatever the team or team members comes up with, especially with the AI solutions. Like there is the whole new world to show, and there are a lot of new methodologies that being created every day. And and I've seen on one of the chat rooms that you've created a really impressive methodology to identify personas, and how to connect different personas with the right hooks, with the right ad creatives, and basically map it all together so that it's very useful for the strategist to present it to the client as a roadmap, what kind of ad creative tests you could deploy in the future as a brand. And it'd be great if we could maybe go through together that kind of methodology.
Absolutely. So maybe let's do that. I can share my screen and just a couple of words of introduction of why bother. Because at some point with one of the clients that we were working with, we essentially started asking questions about which target audiences we're currently capturing and where there's potential to grow. I believe that at some point every company essentially hits a brick wall in terms of the audiences that they're currently targeting, and this is the exact point at which we are constantly hearing from CMOs, directors of growth, that they are not able to break the glass ceiling. And what this as analysis isn't is a solution for this, like immediate, do this and it's going to work. It's more of an exercise and directional analysis that helps to identify if we feel that we are at the point at which we are struggling to break the glass ceiling, where do we go from there? And I believe that one of the directions that you can take is consider which audiences that you're currently not targeting and just go after them. And two more things before we jump in. First is that unfortunately, in today's paid media world, it's not entirely possible to be very deliberate and as precise as you would maybe want to be in terms of target audience, intentional target audience targeting. Because there's a lot of black box campaigns like Advantage Plus, Performance Max, where you're essentially just throwing all of the assets into the campaign and just hoping that they are going to show to the target audience that you're aiming for. Obviously, there's options for deploying exclusions and adjusting this targeting, but you always have limited control over that. So yeah, there's this analysis, this methodology is, and we could say to a certain extent in contrary with the general like paid media trends. So that is why the other thing that I want to say at this stage is that it's not a strategy that you can roll out in paid media directly as it is. I found the target audience that I want to go after. Let's just do a campaign that's going to target this campaign audience. That's not something that we recommend, because generally speaking, at the end of the day, unfortunately, the black box campaigns usually perform better than the ones that you are trying to do in an old school fashion. So yeah, we kind of have to adjust. But now, where it's helpful, I think, even in this world of a lot of black box campaigns and a lack of visibility in terms of targeting, is that even if you're running Performance Max or Advantage Plus campaigns with limited targeting options, creative still matters. And this whole concept kind of comes back to the idea of basics of marketing. So what product do I have, to who do I want to show that product, and with what messaging? And even if you have performance max campaigns that you will feed specific creatives that are going to be targeted at a specific target audience, there's a high chance that those campaigns will actually start to address this target audience, because we're building those kind of close customer journeys, where from the point of seeing the ad, then going into the landing page, and then conversion and post-purchase and kind of nurture, it's all kind of closed and intentionally personalized towards specific target audience. And one last thing, this whole methodology is based on a really great podcast that I've been listening to with Ezra Firestone, who's a very experienced e-commerce guru. I guess we can call him that. Extremely talented person, and he's been kind of working and fiddling with this framework of the who, why, what, and benefits marketing. This methodology that I implemented is a little bit different, because it was kind of more adjusted to clients' needs, etc. It's not like one-to-one copy, but But there's that. And I really believe in this idea because when thinking about creative, you can fiddle with like, let's show that specific product, but in a different context. Thanksgiving is right up the alley. So, you can just use the creative that you currently have and just put it in different context. But I believe that really understanding your target audience and trying to be as empathetic as possible towards your target audience is going to help you to spin up creative that is actually going to be very targeted and very personalized, and that typically works because that's why we build landing pages, right? And creative essentially is the same. So
I get it. So it's all about becoming more and more granular in the way, and in a very organized and structured way. Because since, as you said, like PMax and all the closed black box solutions, you don't have to focus that much on that anymore. And now you can shift resources and focus and basically become more granular when it comes to the different needs, different benefits, different personas. And in the past, you had like 3 or 4. Now you can have 50, and kind of present it all to the agencies that provide ad creative assets or to some creators and ask them to deliver and test way more in very organized I guess is like how granular this analysis becomes.
Yep. So exactly that, and I think that it's just useful in terms of directional. What are my options? Just mapping all of that. So let's dive into the analysis itself, and just really quickly, I feel like in today's world, I mean, it's not going to be something new, but AI is powerful, and for this type of analysis, I think it's just like unbelievably helpful. And why I think that is because I believe that majority of brands more or less know their major target audience, but they have blind spots, which AI can fill. And the way I go around that is I use Gemini Deep Search because also every brand likely knows their personas. But what I find most often working with various companies is that it's more gut feeling based than data driven. They just had an imagination and perspective on what their target audience is, but they didn't necessarily do any proper research and proper data driven analysis towards what is the size of the audience. I mean, some do, like total addressable market analysis and those sorts of stuff is popular. But in terms of assessing what the actual demand is that we can capture with paid media, for example, this isn't so popular. So I used Gemini Deep Search to essentially fill out the blind spots. And based on what we know about our brand and our products, I try to search with prompting for target audiences that are corresponding, but maybe not necessarily currently targeted. Based on, for example, landing pages that are on the website, we can assume that if there is a target audience that makes sense for this specific product, but there's no landing page, no content about it, it seems like this company doesn't really focus on this target audience. So this is what the AI is searching for, and I'm coming up with this kind of minimum and maximum market volume with Gemini Deep Search because of the fact that it's doing pretty well in these types of analysis. At the end of the day, I also always output sources, but this is directional data. We have to account for that because Gemini uses various types of studies, and this is never apples to apples comparison. It uses publicly available statistical data from the government side. It uses independent studies. It uses meta-analysis from different worlds and verticals. So this is
So what you're saying is that you have prompts to get educated guesses, basically based on the available data, and probabilistically educated guess is way better than not knowing, not having a clue how big that specific audience or opportunity is. So I get it, and this is extremely useful use case for a large language model.
Yep. I think, we live in our world where educated guesses and directionally correct recommendations, I think, are just taking over. And there are ways in marketing to, be more precise with analysis and actual data-driven recommendations. But it's always better to have a directionally correct recommendation and direction, and then you test into it, and then you have actual data. So I treat this as the starting point where we're mapping our opportunities, and then we go test into them. But what's more interesting, and this is more tangible than the audience's data, is search interest. And this is where SEO comes into play, which I believe SEO is a powerful tool for understanding a lot of things that are not necessarily related to SEO. And the product demand is one of them. So what we do here is for each kind of target audience that was identified, we are searching for non-branded generic keywords that are a good proxy for demand in the category. And we list like 10, 15 of them, just like generic keywords. And then with Ahrefs analysis, we are looking at what volumes are there for those keywords to assess search interest or demand, however we want to call it. And then this data point to me says that if there are target audiences that, for example, show significant volume in terms of overall TAM, but for example, low search interest, it means that it may be a target audience that just doesn't care about these products, or it may be an audience that we have to educate. And this is for some, newer products in the industry. This is often the case where there's just not yet that much demand, but somehow the company is growing and we just have to double down on an educational content and upper funnel and brand awareness activities. On the other hand, we have audiences that, for example, show low market volume but significant search interest, and those are our champions, like target audiences that will likely convert quickly with proper creative. And I found that for majority of the companies, those are their main audiences, so the ones that are easy, and that is where mapping the audiences that we might want to go after, even though it's going to be a little bit harder, is useful at some point of the growth of the company. So yeah, there's that. The next data points that we use for creative strategies is aligned with this framework from Ezra Firestone that I mentioned, and this very empathetic marketing, where we're trying to understand the use cases, the benefits, the real pain points that we are solving, and what those target audiences can get out of the product based on who those people are. So, for example, this was done for a company that's selling teas online as well, and we found that the biggest target audience that they can go after, which is going to be pretty self-explanatory, is everyday comfort users. But we've got audiences like athletes, women's health advocates, digestive and reproductive, functional detox and cleanse users. So in this specific scenario, we were more based on the USPs of specific ranges of products, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think it depends on the company. For some companies, it's going to be more all about who you are, what do you do for a living, and that kind of stuff.
But I think that's
yeah, go
just going back to the difference between search volume and market volume. Like tea is a good example. A lot of people like tea, and the market is big, but not all people search for that. It depends on the product line, the product category, service type, and so on. But advertisement in the internet still matters because you want to educate the users, but the conversion happens offline in many cases. So I guess that could be the case like of tea. That's why we could see huge differences between market volume and search interest. But search interest is still a great proxy to identify and recognize which clusters or like segments, how big they are in relation to each other using more or less this similar methodology, and also follow the whole process that you're just describing: who, what, why, and so on. That absolutely makes sense. Just this one thought that I wanted to share about the search volume.
I agree 100%. And like the relationship between the two is what's going to impact prioritization, in my opinion. We typically, just thinking about the recommendations coming out of this analysis, we typically spin up a target audience score, we call it, or essentially a proxy. We assign weights to each of the data points that we are analyzing, search demand, size, and then we sometimes fiddle with brand score because some of those audiences might just not be suitable for the brand because of reasons. Maybe the communication is just not proper, and we won't be able to fit creative to be brand safe and target this target audience. And then we kind of out of that, we are creating this target audience score, which we use to prioritize testing into those audiences because that's where the magic happens and that's what's valuable. The analysis, the research, it's all important, but the true business value comes when we start testing into those. So yeah, last thing here before I jump into the second tab, which is going to be shorter, but I just really wanted to show a couple of signals which we're looking at there. The final most important thing for creative production and building those close customer journeys are the benefits. So in the framework that I mentioned, benefits, the last element is the most important, where we're trying to analyze based on keyword research, based on what we are able to find through Gemini Deep Search. We essentially create hooks or recommendations for hooks, and we assign products to specific target audiences to have a deep understanding of with which product and with what benefit communication we have to go after those target audiences. And then we test into this. And one last thing that we did for this specific analysis is we looked at search interest across mediums, and this is using data that's available in Exponent Topics. This is a tool from the SEMrush kind of umbrella, where you're able to see based on a specific keyword where these searches occur. So, for example, for everyday comfort users, we've picked a couple of, again, branded generic keywords that are a proxy for the category. And we are looking at which platforms could we consider for this specific target audience. And then also seasonality. So at the end of the day, using this type of approach, we have all of the information that we need to build a successful campaign and close customer journey, because we know who our target audience is, what they are looking for, and why, and what are the benefits that we should present to them, which products are fitting for them, what is the size of this target audience, what is the demand, so we can prioritize. Then we have information about which platforms should we go after, and what is the seasonality, so we know exactly when, why, what, and kind of everything
Even
that
where.
we should advertise to those target audiences. As mentioned a couple of times already, now the magic happens because we have to test it.
And you have to produce assets for the top platforms that you've chosen and you prioritized. Wow, that's a very cool process. That's very impressive in my opinion. How reliable the data is from exploding topics according to your experience?
From my experience, again, it's directional.
Uh-huh.
Looking at, because we've been looking at this data and kind of comparing that with our customers' data to determine that. And I would say in majority of the cases, the relationships between the channels are more or less correct. The volumes don't match at all. So
Okay.
let's not look at the volumes, because those tools that are using externally available data are never very accurate. But the relationship between channels like TikTok, Pinterest, and Instagram, YouTube, it's more or less matches what we're seeing for the specific brands that we're working with.
Awesome. And how, like, going back to the granular, how specific you go, how deep you go in the analysis, how granular the analysis becomes. I'm wondering, like, does it make sense to if you have this level of analysis, does it make sense to revisit the dashboard, the analysis, and basically maybe split some segments to two different segments and benefits and products and platforms and try to go deeper in this sense? Like, does it make sense? Because I'm feeling that this is how you could discover maybe some niches of like creatives that you could add to the testing sequence. Is it something that you thought about, or that's a rather and
I feel like, going back to the conversation about the black box campaigns and the general state of paid media, it's going to be tough to be so granular. And I would say, if we feel like athletes is our target audience, let's create a landing page for those, and let's start creating more creative that are going to be targeting athletes. And I think in time you will find creative angles that are working better than the rest. And whether it's going to be athletes, but in a specific context, doing activity, or maybe more recovering at their home. So the hooks and the angles and how the, for example, video scripts are going to look like would be what could inform this further granularity that you're mentioning. So just coming from a high level perspective, testing with creative development and iteration into specific angles. And then at some point, maybe we will feel that athletes that, I don't know, runners. We've tested a couple of different athletes and runners we found are showing the best performance. Let's consider this a separate target audience, because why not? That would be my perspective.
cool, that makes sense. Are there any other tabs that you would like to show during this video, or that's it?
I think that's it. There's essentially a shit ton of data sources here, so I think it's just not going to be interesting. The one thing that I could add to this whole conversation is that, as mentioned a couple of times already, this is just a start, but I believe in data, I believe in reporting, and whenever we have any problem to solve, I always solve it with dashboards. And for example, creative targeting is one of those. So coming out of that, we actually went further and created, currently we're creating dashboards that are going to be showing the, for example, creative inventory and creative performance across those target audiences, thanks to, this is a start of a methodology that you can then kind of spread across various elements of paid media work. For example, do we feel confident in our coverage of athletes from creative standpoint in terms of just pure volumes of different types of assets that we have running on the accounts? We don't know. How do we assess that? We have to deploy naming convention and build another dashboard that is going to say that for athletes we have that many videos, that many statics, that many GIFs, and maybe score it on a 1 to 10 confidence score of how covered we feel. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think I'm very personally I'm very excited about like those types of analysis and dashboards where they create ripple effects on other areas of the work. Yeah.
So in essence, the
Yeah.
answer that this dashboard and this whole work gives to the end user, which is the board or the CMO, head of growth, is basically the answer to the question, do we have any blind spots when it comes to the audiences? And in the future, maybe, do we have any blind spots between the segments, audiences, who, what, when, why, and also how many creatives we have or we produced and tested in the past, and it maps it all together. And then like at one point, you can see that some specific the segment is neglected and underinvested, and maybe some more money could be funneled into that direction and some more assets could be produced and tested as a result. That's a great question to have answered and have certainty to that we company owns that and have answers to that like right away, just a couple of clicks away. That's an awesome dashboard and an awesome answer in my opinion. How do you see that evolving in the future? In a perfect world, how would you see creative process in companies in the future?
Yeah. I think that the black box element of paid media is never going to go away. If anything, it's just going to get even worse. So the way I think about this is we have to find creative workarounds in terms of figuring out how to first target specific audiences and then how to report, because that's like more tricky. How do you say if we are doing well in the athletes and active lifestyle, for example, target audience? If we went after it 3 months ago, we decided that we're going after it. We started producing more creative. We started running campaigns. How do you assess if we're doing fine or not?
Get it. So do we have an uplift in specific segment or not? I guess post-purchase service could be an optional answer to that question. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
I agree. Post-purchase surveys are great, and I think it definitely helps. But where I would like to take this methodology is essentially turn this into a baseline of strategic operations, where at the start of every key operation, we kind of sitting down and figuring out, okay, where we're at, who are we targeting, how confident do we feel that this target is currently reaching its maximum capacity or not, or do we still have space to grow in this category? Try to find measures to determine that. I think that post-purchase surveys are great. I think that independent studies could also be great. There are companies that are helping with those types of questions as well. And then coming out of that, I would like to get more granularity in terms of reporting. So I mentioned this mapping of how confident are we that we have coverage in all of the specific areas. It ties to seasonality, it ties to business goals, where in my perfect world, after 3 months of our cooperation with a client, we have all of this mapped. We have our command center in place, and we were able to assess what are our needs in terms of next 3 and 6 months in terms of creative, because based on the analysis, we prioritize who we're going after. And based on the reporting and the command center, we know how well covered we are, so we know exactly what to work on. And I think that's like one of the problems that I would like us to keep solving is uncertainty, and just like not knowing what our priorities are, not knowing what should we lean into in the next 3 to 6 months, because that's I found that it's helpful for our customers, very helpful for our customers, where they are struggling and just like trying to piece everything together between managing their team and managing board expectations and maintaining day-to-day performance. I think that's where we are helpful. And yeah, as I mentioned, activities that are creating ripple effects that are helping more people than just your closest surroundings. So helping the CMOs, helping the board, in terms of like where do we go from here with a data-driven approach, because as mentioned at the beginning, I'm saying that majority of brands know who their target audience is, at least the core target audience, and when do they search, how do they search, but it's very often based on gut feeling versus actual data-driven approach.
I think that's what this dashboard is showing me, is that Google, Meta, all the ad platforms, they want to take as much work as possible from the brands, from agencies, from brands, because when they take that over, they can optimize it, they can deploy AI, they can deploy automations, and they can make the whole system to work better. But one thing that they cannot do for brands, they cannot they cannot change their marketing. So like what you show to the users, what kind of ad creatives, what kind of assets in terms of like organic social media presence and visibility, what you produce and what you show to the world, like is under full control of the brand. That's something that they will never probably take it away, or to some extent they try to take pieces out of it and automate that and propose them different options. And in this instance, I think that is something that is fully controllable still by brands. And that's even if like marketing and paid media will start to rely fully on just black box solutions like PMax and so on. I think that's something that will just become 90% of focus and work. I guess that's the future. So every brand should have a file like that, basically.
Yeah, from frankly speaking, it's I feel like when we're kind of in a reality where people in the past couple of years get so hung up on just like paid media optimization and changing channel strategies and deploying new technologies and tools, because there's a lot of SaaS companies that are saying that they're going to revolutionize your paid media performance because they are going to give you this one little element of additional exclusions for targeting, and it's just going to shift your whole paid media. And I feel like the industry kind of lost the idea of what marketing is in terms of like, again, just like who are we targeting with what product? Why should they even bother with the product? And what do we say to them? That has implications to not only paid media, even though we are obviously mostly focused on that area, but just like, organic, and even thinking about the broader place of the company in the industry, pricing implications, everything. For all of this, you need to really understand your target audiences. And as we mentioned a couple of times, recognize your blind spots, because everyone has some.
So what you're saying is that a lot of brands use their gut feeling and they have few personas, few angles, let's say, mapped out. Is it possible that actually the level of personalization and how deep you could go and how many different angles you could cover, different personas, different needs, different combinations of products, personas, situation, where, what, when, and so on is so big, is that as a result, that's something that could, I already asked that question, but I get this feeling that in the past I remember workshops in which you could like identify 3, 5, 10 personas, and that was the end, because the human capacity was able only to group products, needs, situations only to 10 personas maximum, 2 hours, 4 hours workshop. But I think that the reality is way more complex. With AI solutions, all that, it's gonna be possible to identify, I don't know, 100, 1,000 different personas and go so deep that, I don't know, that maybe there is this long tail, for creatives as well out there that is yet not that discovered, like in SEO, that maybe the industry will evolve into that direction. I don't know, just throwing that philosophical question out there to you. Maybe, I don't know what future holds, but I'm wondering about topics like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody knows. We'll see. Interesting times, that's for sure. But I think that with AI, our capacity is just going to grow so much, and is going to help with data analysis so much. Like the Gemini example, part of this analysis is based on Gemini Deep Search, and as I mentioned, it's not 100% accurate. I wouldn't, bet everything that they all own on this data, but it's directionally correct. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. The rest is testing, and I believe that human brains haven't had the capacity to go that deep with the like actual analysis. So I absolutely agree that the tools, the technologies are going to allow us to just increase this capacity. And you need that data to prioritize, because as you mentioned, you've been able to go after like 3 to 5 target audiences, because how much creative can you do? How much new campaigns can you do? How much new landing pages can you do with still like having control over reporting and drawing learning? Because you can create 10 landing pages and 20 new campaigns with 100 new creatives. But what's the point if you don't test and don't analyze the results then? So yeah, so I think that data still is going to be key, and it's going to help you prioritize, because out of the, for example, 13 audiences that we have here on the spreadsheet, we are only going after like 3 at one point in time, and that's aggressive in my opinion. If you want to have that control and just like reporting.
That's 20% that gives you 80% of results. Who knows maybe going after 10, 20 and becoming, focusing, like, becoming more granular could be one of the answers to how to become more granular. Because I think that the whole concept of personas was just simplification in the past. Like, you have to simplify reality to try to to build around it or on top of it. But now maybe with the tools like Gemini and AI, it's going to be possible to actually reflect the reality as it is, not just rely on simplifications like personas and so on. But still, this is the reality. This is the most efficient process so far, like that was invented, that now it's enhanced with AI. All right, thanks a lot, Jack. I learned a lot. It was fascinating. Thanks a lot, and maybe see you in the next episode in which you will show us something.
Sure thing. And thanks for having me and for the convo.
Just one more question. Would you like to share the template to that kind of file in the description? And maybe, I don't know, leave links to that users could potentially try to replicate what you built?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. We can create a copy, and then I could also share the Gemini prompts, although as everyone listening to this probably knows, it's not just one prompt that's going to solve everything. It was a lot of work to, kind of based on the initial output, get to the point where we're happy. But I can share at least the initial prompt, and I think that might be helpful for people listening as well.
Okay, so one more thing. Do you think that makes sense to reach out to you in case someone would need help with such file?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, I love helping companies with things that they struggle with, especially if they create ripple effects in the brand. I think that's one of those things. So absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Jack. See you. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.